They thought the night would be predictable. Another royal selection. Another parade of flawless noble daughters, dressed in silken arrogance, each believing she would be chosen by the most feared ruler in the realm, the Vampire King. Candles burned low in the grand hall. Crimson banners whispered in the cold air. Every noble family watched, breath held, as he entered. Silent. Unreadable. Dangerous. The Vampire King walked past them all. One by one, the noble ladies stepped forward, offering rehearsed smiles, practiced grace, and bloodlines stretching back centuries. But he didn't stop. Didn't even look. Confusion spread like poison. Then, he paused. Not before a duchess. Not before a princess. But at the very edge of the hall, where no one important ever stood. A girl. Dressed in plain, worn fabric. No family crest. No name whispered among elites. An outcast. She lowered her gaze, expecting punishment for simply existing in a place she didn't belong. Instead, the Vampire King stepped toward her. And in a moment that shattered every rule, every expectation, every fragile ego in that room, he bowed. Not a nod. Not a gesture. A true, deliberate bow, reserved only for someone of undeniable worth. Gasps erupted. Nobles turned pale. Some trembled. Others burned with silent rage. Because they all felt it, this wasn't a mistake. This was recognition. What no one knew, what no one could even begin to imagine, was that the nameless girl carried a secret older than the throne itself. And the Vampire King? He hadn't chosen her. He had finally found her. The girl's name was Alara, though she rarely heard anyone speak it with kindness. She had come to the capital 3 months ago, fleeing a village that had turned against her after the crops failed. They needed someone to blame, and a girl with no family made an easy target. She had slipped into the royal selection hall only because she'd been cleaning the corridors earlier that day. A servant had taken pity on her, offering a corner near the back where she might watch something beautiful for once, instead of scrubbing floors until her hands cracked and bled. Alara hadn't expected to be seen. She certainly hadn't expected this. When the Vampire King rose from his bow and met her eyes, she saw something that frightened her more than his legendary power. She saw sadness. Deep, ancient sadness, mixed with something that looked almost like relief. "You carry the mark," he said quietly. His voice was gentler than she'd imagined, though it still commanded absolute attention. "On your left shoulder. A symbol you were born with, that no healer could explain." Alara's breath caught. No one knew about the mark except the village elder who had delivered her, and he'd died years ago. It looked like a tree with roots that became stars, beautiful but strange, something she'd always hidden beneath her clothes. "How do you?" "Because I have been searching for you for 200 years. He spoke softly, but the hall had fallen so silent that everyone heard. "You are the keeper. the last of an ancient line sworn to hold the covenant of balance. And I am bound by sacred oath to protect you, even at the cost of my crown, my kingdom, or my life. The murmurs began immediately. Confused, angry, disbelieving. A duchess in emerald silk stepped forward, her face flushed. Your Majesty, surely you cannot mean, this is a servant. A nobody. Some mark on her skin means nothing compared to. It means everything. The vampire king's tone didn't rise, but something in it made the duchess step back. The covenant of balance is the reason our lands have not fallen to darkness or been consumed by light. It is the reason crops grow, children are born, and death comes gently instead of as a ravaging plague. For 3,000 years, there has always been a keeper. They live in secret, unknown, because knowledge of their existence would make them a target for those who wish to tear the world apart. He turned back to Alara, and his expression softened again. I had thought the line broken. The last keeper I knew of died 60 years ago in a fire, and I could find no trace of an heir. I feared the covenant would fail, and we would all pay the price. Ilara's mind spun. She had grown up with strange dreams, visions of flowing light and shadow, of whispered words and languages she didn't know but somehow understood. She'd always felt different, as though she were listening to a song no one else could hear. But she'd thought it was just another way she didn't fit, another reason to be afraid. I don't understand, as she whispered. I'm no one special. I don't know anything about covenants or balance. I've just been trying to survive. I know. The king's voice held an ache of understanding. The knowledge comes in time, passed through blood and bone. You feel it even if you don't yet understand it. The pull toward equilibrium. The way you calm a room without meaning to. The reason storms quiet when you're frightened, and flowers bloom where you rest. She thought of the small garden behind the servants' quarters, how things grew there that shouldn't survive in such poor soil. She thought of the sick child she'd sat with last week, how his fever had broken after she'd simply held his hand. I thought. Her voice cracked. I thought I was cursed. No. The king shook his head gently. You are blessed. And you are in great danger. As if his words had summoned it, a cold tension filled the hall. Alara saw the way some nobles looked at her now, not with disdain, but with calculation. With hunger. A duke in black and silver spoke up, his voice smooth as oil. If what you say is true, Your Majesty, then surely this girl should be placed under careful guard. Protected. Perhaps in my estate, where I have resources to. She will be protected by me. The king's words were final. As has been the sacred duty of my bloodline since the first covenant was made. No other hand will guard her. No other roof will shelter her. This is not negotiable. And if we do not accept this, peasant, as someone deserving of such reverence, The Duchess in Emerald had found her courage again, and venom dripped from every word. You would turn your back on all of us, on alliances and bloodlines that have sustained your rule, for a girl who can't even prove what she is? The Vampire King was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, there was no anger in his voice, only certainty. The crown I wear, the throne I sit upon, the very stones of this palace, all of these exist because the covenant holds. If it falls, everything falls. You speak of bloodlines and alliances as though they matter more than the foundation upon which all life rests. He paused, then added softly, I would burn this palace to ash myself if it would keep the keeper safe. Do not test whether I speak truth. No one dared respond. The king turned to Alara and extended his hand. Not a command, but an offering. Will you come with me? I cannot force you. The covenant was built on willing service, on freely given protection. But I promise you this, no harm will reach you while I draw breath. You will have safety, food, warmth, and time to understand what you carry. I ask nothing of you except that you allow me to fulfill my oath. Alara looked at his hand. She had spent her whole life being invisible, unwanted, pushed to the margins. Now the most powerful being in the realm was offering her protection, claiming she mattered more than kingdoms. It should have felt like a dream. Instead, it felt like something clicking into place. Like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. She took his hand. His fingers were cool but steady, and she felt a strange warmth flow through her at the touch, like recognition, like coming home. Then we leave tonight, he said quietly. Before ambition becomes action. He was right to worry. The king's name was Theron, and he moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had protected precious things for centuries. Within an hour, Alara found herself in a private carriage, wrapped in a cloak far finer than anything she'd ever touched, with Theron sitting across from her in silence. He didn't speak until they were well beyond the city walls, the lights of the capital fading behind them. I owe you truth, he said finally. And an apology. Alara looked up, surprised. An apology? You should never have been alone. The keepers were always meant to be guarded, taught, prepared. When I lost track of the line, I failed in my oldest duty. You have suffered because I was not vigilant enough. There was such genuine remorse in his voice that Alara felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. You didn't know I existed. How could you have protected me? I should have searched harder. Looked in the forgotten places, the margins where people like you are forced to survive. His eyes, dark and deep as old wells, met hers. I became too focused on courts and politics. I forgot that the most important things are often hidden in plain sight, among those the powerful choose not to see. They rode in thoughtful silence for a while. Finally, Alara asked the question that had been growing in her mind. What happens now? Where are we going? To the first sanctuary, Theron replied. A place built when the covenant was young, designed to be safe even if all else falls. There are texts there, records, teachings. You will learn what you are, what you can do. And I will make certain that no one who seeks to use you or harm you can reach you. And the nobles? They'll be angry. You said alliances. Won't this damage your rule? A faint smile touched his lips, though it was sad. My rule has endured for 3 centuries because I remember what truly matters. Power without purpose becomes tyranny. A throne built on a foundation of lies and broken oaths will not stand. He paused, then added more softly, let them be angry. Let them scheme. I have faced worse for lesser reasons. You are worth the cost. Alara didn't know what to say to that. She had never been worth anything to anyone. Why? The word came out small, almost childlike. Why does it matter so much? The covenant, I mean. What does it actually do? Theron considered his answer carefully. Imagine the world as a vast tapestry, woven from threads of light and darkness, life and death, growth and decay. Each thread is necessary. Too much light, and everything burns. Too much darkness, and everything withers. The covenant is what keeps the threads in balance. And the keeper, you, are the living heart of that balance. He leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. You have already been doing the work without knowing it. Every time you brought calm to chaos, every time your presence eased pain or helped something grow, that was the covenant working through you. But untrained, unprotected, you're vulnerable. There are forces that would corrupt that power, twist it, break the balance deliberately to gain advantage. What kind of forces? The kind that believe destroying the world is worthwhile if they can rule the ashes. His voice was grim but gentle. I have spent lifetimes keeping such forces at bay. But without a keeper, the balance grows fragile. I feared we were running out of time. Alara looked down at her hands, calloused, scarred from work and hardship. I don't feel powerful. The strongest things rarely do. Theron's voice was kind. A seed doesn't feel powerful, yet it contains an entire forest. You will learn. And I will be there every step, as my ancestors were for yours. The sanctuary stood in a hidden valley, surrounded by ancient woods that seemed to hum with quiet life. It was not a fortress, but a place of peace, stone walls covered in climbing vines, windows that caught the moonlight, gardens that grew in wild, beautiful abundance. Alara felt something ease inside her the moment they arrived, as though her bones recognized the place. Your ancestors helped build this, Theron said as he helped her down from the carriage. Every keeper has added something. Knowledge, beauty, protection. It's yours now. Truly yours. Over the following weeks, Alara began to understand what she was. Theron was a patient teacher. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply showed her the old texts, walked with her through the gardens, and helped her recognize the power that had always been part of her. She learned that the mark on her shoulder was a map of the covenant itself, every line representing a connection between opposing forces, all held in careful balance. She learned that her dreams were not random but messages, the covenant's way of showing her where balance was threatened. She learned that she could soothe pain, encourage growth, and calm storms, not through magic in the traditional sense, but through her very presence. She was a living anchor, a point of equilibrium in a chaotic world. And she learned that Theron had given up more than she'd realized to protect her. One evening, as they sat in the sanctuary's library, a messenger arrived. Theron read the letter in silence, then set it aside with a sigh. "What is it?" Ilara asked. "3 noble houses have withdrawn their support for my rule. They claim I have abandoned reason and honor by elevating a commoner above tradition." His tone was calm, but she saw the weight in his eyes. "2 more are threatening to follow unless I return you to the capital and submit you to the council's authority." Guilt crashed over Alara like a wave. "You're losing your kingdom because of me." "No." Theron's response was immediate and firm. "I am keeping my kingdom's soul intact. There is a difference between ruling and merely holding power. If I must choose between a throne and the covenant, I choose the covenant. Every time. Without question." "But Ilara." He said her name gently, and she fell silent. "Do you know why my bloodline was chosen to guard the keepers?" She shook her head. "Because we understand the cost of protection. Because we have seen empires rise and fall, and we know that power is fleeting but responsibility is eternal. My ancestor made an oath 3,000 years ago, and I will honor it even if every noble in the realm turns against me." He smiled slightly. "Besides, they will calm. Anger fades. And when the next harvest is abundant, when their children are born healthy, when their lands remain peaceful, they will remember why balance matters." "You really believe that?" "I do." His certainty was unshakable. "And even if I'm wrong, even if it costs me everything, you will still be safe. That is what matters." Alara felt something shift in her heart. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be valued. Not for what she could do, not for what she could provide, but simply for existing. For being who she was. "Thank you," Ishi whispered. Theron inclined his head, that same gesture of deep respect he'd shown her in the hall. "It is my honor." 3 months after the royal selection, Alara stood in the sanctuary garden at dawn, her hands resting on the earth. She could feel it now, the vast web of connections that made up the covenant. Every living thing, every breath of wind, every drop of water. All of it connected, all of it held in delicate, beautiful balance. She was learning to tend it consciously now. To feel where the balance tipped too far and gently nudge it back. It was not dramatic work. It was quiet, careful, constant. like tending a garden or minding a flame. She heard footsteps and turned to find Theron approaching. He looked tired but peaceful. "More letters?" she asked. "A few. But also something better." He handed her a sealed parchment. "From the farmers in the eastern provinces. They report the best growing season in 50 years. They wanted to send their gratitude to the crown for whatever blessing had been bestowed." Elara felt warmth bloom in her chest. "I've been focusing on that region. The balance was strained there. Too much rain, then too much drought. I've been trying to smooth it out." "You have done more than that. You have given them hope." Theron's expression was proud, almost paternal. "This is what the covenant is meant to be. Not a weapon, not a tool of control. Simply, care. The world caring for itself, through you." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun rise over the valley. "The nobles are starting to understand," Theron said after a while. "Slowly. Some still resist, but others have begun to see the evidence. Healers report fewer mysterious illnesses. Storms that threatened to destroy coastal towns have turned aside at the last moment. Small miracles, everywhere." He glanced at her. "Your miracles." "Our work," Elara corrected gently. "You protect me so I can do this. That makes it ours." Theron smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "I suppose it does." Another silence, peaceful and easy. Then Elara asked the question she'd been holding for weeks. "What happens when I'm gone?" "When I die, I mean. Will you have to search for the next keeper all over again?" "The covenant passes through bloodlines," Theron said carefully. "When the time comes, if you have children, the mark will pass to one of them. If not, it will find someone else, a distant cousin, perhaps, or a line we've forgotten. The covenant preserves itself." He paused, then added more softly, "But that is far in the future. For now, you are here. You are safe. You are learning. That is enough." "And you'll stay? Even after I've learned everything? Even when it's boring and quiet and there's no danger?" Theron looked at her with those ancient, steady eyes. "I will stay as long as you need me. That is my oath, Elara. Not just to protect you from threats, but to be here. To make certain you are never alone in this burden. Protection is not only about standing between you and a sword. It is also about standing beside you in the quiet moments, so you do not have to carry the weight alone." Elara felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. From gratitude. From finally feeling like she belonged somewhere. "Thank you," she said again, because there were no other words big enough. "Always," Theron replied. A year after the royal selection, Elara had become something she never imagined she could be, confident. Not arrogant, but certain. She knew who she was now. She understood her purpose. And she was no longer afraid. The sanctuary had become home. She had added her own touches, a new section to the garden where night-blooming flowers grew, a study where she recorded her observations about the covenant, a small library of poetry she'd begun to collect. Theron remained her constant guardian. He taught her, protected her, and most importantly, respected her. He never treated her as a tool or a prize. She was the keeper, yes, but she was also a Lara. A person with thoughts, feelings, preferences, and autonomy. Some of the nobles had come around. A few had even visited the sanctuary, offering quiet apologies for their initial reactions. Alara received them with grace, understanding their fear even if she didn't excuse their cruelty. Others remained hostile, but they were careful now. They had seen that Theron's oath was not an empty gesture. He had sacrificed political convenience, valuable alliances, and easy power, all to keep one nameless girl safe. And the realm had not fallen. In fact, it had flourished. Crops grew. Sickness waned. The weather, while never perfect, lost its most devastating extremes. People began to whisper about a new age of peace, though they didn't know the reason for it. Ilara knew. And Theron knew. And that was enough. One evening, as they walked through the garden together, Theron said something that surprised her. I owe you an apology I have not yet given. Ilara looked up at him, confused. For what? For bowing to you that night. In the hall. He spoke carefully, as though he'd been thinking about this for a long time. I did not ask your permission. I revealed you to the world without warning, without giving you a choice. It was the right